Hey, welcome everybody to the Kentuckiana FileMaker Developers Group. This is the January 2024 session. Today we have Mark Richman from Skeleton Key. He's going to be presenting Gloss, one of their new products. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure and check the description for the link, kyfmp.com, so you can join us. We have sessions on the last Tuesday of every month, and everybody's welcome. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark. And Mark, it's all yours.
Thanks, Ron. So right off the bat, I'll say thanks for letting me present. I'll remind folks that I've been taking this presentation or a version of it to a lot of different user groups, and there's different questions in each group, but there's definitely some overlapping content. So hopefully we'll have some new stuff to add to the pile today. I'm joined by my colleague, Greg Lane. He's the Director of Technology at Skeleton Key, and he was instrumental in turning this feature for a customer. Not only developing that feature initially, but actually converting it into a commercial product that we could offer to all of you. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and start. Hold on here. You should be seeing this deck, and hopefully you guys are seeing the whole thing. Give me an audio cue if you can, that you guys are seeing the full.
Perfect.
Excellent. All right, so I'll apologize in advance. I've got two screens, right? So I'm going to be looking here at the deck at times and trying to remember to look at my laptop and the webcam. And we won't spend a lot of time in the deck. I want to use this to set a little context, maybe give you a sense of technology. We're right smack dab in the middle. We've got a demo. I'll take you on a tour of Gloss. I'll remind you where you can download your own copy. So if you want to play along, and let's get rolling. So what is Gloss? Gloss is, simply put, a better way to view, search, and annotate PDFs in FileMaker without ever leaving FileMaker. So let's get into a little bit of why you might want to do that. So find that raise your hand button, if you can, in Zoom. And you're going to raise and lower your hand here, or if you can just leave it up if you want. Just to kind of see if we're all in the same boat here, if we've had different experiences. So raise your hand if you use container fields in your FileMaker solutions. I'm not sure that I'm getting good feedback because of the way I've got PowerPoint set up. So I'm going to assume we got a lot of hands up. Keep them up there if you put PDFs in those container fields. And keep them up if you think the way that container fields naturally allow you to view and interact with PDFs is a great experience. By great, define it how you want. In my brain, that means I can see everything I want to see. It works the same across all my different users' computers, regardless of what operating system they're using or what other software they may have installed. I get a same experience in WebDirect and Go as I do in Pro. It's just consistent. And then lastly, do you wish you could do more? Put those hands back up if you wish you could do more with PDFs inside FileMaker than you can currently. So I can answer these questions for myself. I mean, obviously use container fields, lots of PDFs and other types of documents in there. I've never thought viewing is a great experience. It's certainly inconsistent in the way it presents information. And I've always wished I could do more, like interact, page, search, maybe even annotate and kind of manipulate the PDF itself. But even if it just had consistent viewing and searching and navigation across all my different clients, independent of what other products they may have installed and independent of what version of FileMaker, what type of client interface I'm using, that itself would be a big leg up. And okay, so here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to tell you what Gloss is, why we created it, how it works. We'll spend a good chunk of time in the live demo. And then time permitting, I've hidden these slides for now, and it may or may not be interesting and useful right today, but I do have some slides in here about our journey, like how we got from where we are, where we were trying to solve a problem for a client to what Gloss is today and all the steps along the way of commercializing a product. And so if any of you are in the, I built something, I might like to take it to market. It's not quite the same as taking a solution vertical because it really is more of a SaaS product or a service that we've created here to bolt into or, copy and paste into your solutions. But if that's of interest to the audience, when I've got the time blocked, I'm more than happy to spend going down that rabbit hole a little bit. Otherwise, we'll circle back at the end to feedback, common questions, talk about what's on the horizon, and really try to turn this into a useful one for this particular group of users. So what is it? Um, in a nutshell, you know, it basically just does all the things that we were talking about previously that you wish it could do, right? It's a better experience than container fields, and it's also a better experience than some of the web viewer workarounds that I think we've used over the years. You know, various ways that people have taken PDFs and tried to pipe them into web viewers or hand them off to another application and then bring them back in. And you get really, you get very fragile and inconsistent kind of experiences there. We wanted it to be a better experience, period, than all of those workarounds or what was natively available. We wanted it to be consistent. So it didn't matter whether you were using a Mac or a PC or an iOS device. It didn't matter if you were on WebDirect or Go or Pro. We wanted kind of a universal kind of experience that you could rely on and turn your attention to other more important matters. We wanted to introduce performance, you know, address the performance issues. You know, going way back, Skeleton Key's been sort of an early advocate of thinking about the performance of solutions. And so rather than stream that data to you like container fields do now and make you wait, we wanted to try to render things on the server, you know, provide a better experience so you don't have to download the whole thing to interact with the content. We wanted searching. If there was a text layer in that document, we wanted you to be able to search it so you can navigate and actually interact with the document, not just have to skim and scroll. We wanted annotation and to know where those annotations came from and when. It felt necessary to us that you could customize the UI. As we look at the demo, we'll talk a little bit about the features we built in that allow you to choose which tools to display to which users. And so you have some ability, right, just using native scripts in FileMaker and privilege sets or whatever business rules and logic you want to really control what you allow users to do and when. And we wanted it to be really easy to add to your solutions. We've all adopted products over the years that with varying degrees of difficulty. And we wanted it to be, you know, maybe several steps of copy and paste in a particular order, but it needed to be simple enough that even a relatively new developer could follow those instructions and do it with success, so that they could then focus on how they wanted to then integrate this new functionality into the workflow and the user experience. So why did we create it? Well, because, like I said, container fields are not so great, inconsistent in various ways. Workarounds are fragile, can be really slow, obviously doesn't support annotation. And an important thing that we didn't mention on the previous slide, but which we've developed a technique for using Gloss, is the ability to say, for example, that, you know, it's one thing to have a PDF and have bookmarks that are inside the PDF, but there's no way in FileMaker for you to navigate to a particular bookmark. And in many ways, if you have a PDF in a container field and you scroll to a particular page, let's say page 17, and you wanted that page 17 to be bookmarked in some way, odds are you want it to be bookmarked so that you can make some additional notes about it. Maybe you want to bookmark it so you can assign it to somebody to review it. Maybe you want to bookmark several pages and group them under some kind of common category or heading as being citations or references to a particular important fact or matter. And so none of the workarounds and things that we had seen previously, and even just native container fields, allowed any kind of interaction, both inside the PDF for bookmarking or in your FileMaker solution to say, take me to this PDF's page X or page Y, or create a record that can take me there and therefore let me assign that record to a group or a person or somebody else in the workflow. And so we're going to show you not just Gloss inside the web viewer and kind of the functionality we've created to overcome some of the other obstacles. We'll show you the technique that we've developed that allows you to actually extend your PDF and the pages that you're looking at into your FileMaker solution to support almost any workflow you can imagine that involves navigating to a particular page and possibly assign that record to other kind of life cycle in your solution. In a nutshell, just technically speaking, what it does is really a four-step process. It starts with a container field where you have your PDF. And the first step is we send that PDF from the container field up to Gloss via a Gloss API. I've got some slides later I can show you. It gets a little bit into the infrastructure, but the short version of this is that we upload the PDF to the Gloss server. And then we render that Gloss, that document back into a web viewer in step 2. And so effectively now we're streaming content that's been rendered from the PDF into the web viewer as web content, allowing you to do the various types of viewing and searching and annotation activities. Once you're done making edits or annotations to the document, step 3 is sending those back to Gloss basically and telling Gloss to compress those or add those, I should say, into the PDF file as permanent changes to the PDF file, which is step 4, and put that PDF file back in the container field. So the whole round trip is upload the file, view the file, modify the file, send it back so it arrives in the container field with the annotations that you've made. Now, you obviously don't need all those steps if you're just viewing. Viewing is really just steps 1 and 2. There's no need for steps 3 and 4 because there's no modifications that are made. And you have a lot of control over this behavior. You can control when you send something up. You can control whether or not, step 4, it comes back to the original field, or if it goes into a separate field if you want some kind of version control. You've got a lot of ability inside FileMaker to control a lot of these steps. And we'll get into the detail as time permits. Enough talk. We're not from Kentucky here in St. Louis. We're from all over the country, but we're based in Missouri. So let's show you a little bit of gloss. All right. I'm going to start by showing you gloss in FileMaker. Let me give myself a white background here. So I'm connected to a hosted version of the gloss file. I've got 4 sample files logged in there already. I believe if you download the demo, it's going to have the same 4 files in it as a starting kind of set of files in the solution. And these are just PDFs and container fields, but some of them have already been modified or annotated. To really give you the whole experience here, I'm just going to go ahead and upload a new document to my gloss demo file and start from scratch to kind of show you what that looks like. So I'm going to hit the upload document. It's going to ask me what I would like to upload. I'm going to grab this file that I have sitting in my computer. I'm going to give it some description, maybe some text of some kind, and I'm going to save it. So really all I've done here is create a new document record, and I've added my file with the description into a container field. But because I have the web viewer that displays gloss documents on the layout, it triggered a script that said, oh, grab that file, upload it to gloss, and then render it back into the web viewer. So now I'm inside the web viewer, and I'm able to scroll quite quickly through the document. I can navigate by page. I can pan, or I can zoom in and out. I can look at thumbnails of the pages and scroll through those. And if I want to, I can search the text layer, if there's a text layer in the document, and then find various instances of text. In this case, I searched for their technology, and it's a live search. So as I'm navigating through and it finds additional instances, it'll add those up. So that's the basic viewing and annotation. It's in a web viewer that's set to resize, so it's very responsive. And you get this same experience whether you're in Pro or, as I've got here, in WebDirect. So same web viewer, same layout, same file, same responsive design, and the ability here, the occasional refresh, to interact with that and do the exact same things I just showed you. I'd show it to you in Go, but we're troubleshooting an issue with iOS 17 and the web viewer and JavaScript and such. So we're going to stick to Pro and Go for today's demo. So let's get into annotations, right? That's kind of the fun part. Widen that out so we have a little bit of background. And let's go into annotation mode. So we had a button up here that says annotate the document. This is bringing up a different web viewer, and it's sending a different script call to render a different set of tools. So we have the same navigation tools we have here, but now we also have a suite of annotation tools. So I'm going to go through some of these annotations and take a stab at a few of them. So I've got drawing tools, so I can draw and I can change the color of drawn objects, and I can set different thicknesses for those drawn objects, and so on. I also have the ability to select an existing annotation and modify it in some way, or resize it in some way. I can even do partial erasing of some of those drawn objects. I've got the ability to do freeform highlights, which is by nature has some built-in transparency. So it's 100% transparent here. I can make some adjustments to that and make it a little more or less transparent. I can similarly change the color. Again, I can change the thickness. And it's similar to the drawing tool, except it's intended to be kind of for highlighting purposes. There's a whole bunch of commands here that have to do with very fancy ways that different objects overlay with each other. I'll admit I haven't really explored them. Perhaps those of you who know Photoshop and some of these terminologies like dodge and burn know what they can do. But suffice to say, you've got all this really powerful functionality, even if you just want simple highlighting. We also have, obviously, a much more kind of common need, which is text highlighting, right? We're used to doing that now Maybe we do it with, existing Acrobat or preview tools. And again, I have the same option for changing some colors and potentially overlapping and multiplying those and modifying and manipulating those text highlights. Moving on, I'm going to get to the signature tool. So we're already kind of spoiled in FileMaker. We have a signature tool. You can put it on a particular layout, but there's really no way to incorporate that into your PDF itself unless you've got, some external tool like DocuSign or something else that you kind of integrated with and positioned. Here you can actually do your signature, then take the signature and move it and resize it and position it dynamically where you need it to go inside that particular document. And it's smart enough within a session to, bring up the same signature in case you needed to use it multiple times. We have image and stamp and link tools. So the image tool does what you think. It allows you to select an image. So I've got a picture of Milo here. And so I can resize that image and put it on the layout. I can put images from my computer on there. I can use the stamp tool. This brings up a set of kind of templated stamps. So I could say maybe that this is approved. Right, there we go, slid down on me. And I can do some rotation and I can do some resizing and so on with that. But I can also create a custom stamp if I wanted to. And I could call this the KYFMP. And then I could say, I don't need the time on it. And I think I'd rather use orange. And now I've got a custom stamp. We've got the ability to do a link. This isn't altogether also that unfamiliar. We've probably seen this in other PDF editing tools. The link tool basically lets me, click and then put in a link either to a page inside this PDF or to an outside website. So if I wanted to, I could put in one for Claris. And now I've got this link that's there, maybe a little hard to see it. I think I have a way that can change the color of that. I always struggle with the links, but if I click on that, it's going to take me to it. And then I have the ability similarly within here, I believe, to create a link, pick a new one. I want to say I want to go to a page, and I can say, let's say I want this page to take me to page 40. And it'll jump me within the actual PDF. So I can add links as I need to. I've got note features, all different styles of notes. I know in preview on the Mac, we have just that little sticky note, and you have maybe some other annotation tools out there that offer you different shapes and sizes. Here you've got a whole array of note styles and colors that you can use. And then this is my note, and you can see as I'm typing there, I've got ability to, maybe manipulate the color or change the this shape of it if I want to. We've got text call outs and text boxes, pretty traditional stuff here. Come in here and say, this is text. And I can take that text box and I can move it and I can resize it and I can even change the font as necessary. I can modify alignment if I wanted to use a call out. Maybe I wanted to point at something. Then I could take this and I could manipulate the call out to point at a particular object. So again, manipulating it, we're using the standard set of tools that kind of show up over and over here. And then lastly, I've got drawing tools of all different shapes and sizes. So if I decided, for example, on this last page that I wanted to, let's say, put a cloud, then I could manipulate this, resize it, change the color, do all kinds of things. And you even got polylines, so you can draw pretty sophisticated items, draw arrows and so on as needed. As I'm doing all these annotations, they are actually showing up on the annotations sidebar. And you can see each of them knows what data was created. And I can use this to actually navigate to the annotation. So if I decide I want to get rid of an annotation, I can just hit the backspace key. Or if I decide I want to take an existing annotation, I don't want to make some modification to it, I can do that. So I don't have to actually struggle with the mouse to click on it. I can use the sidebar. This is really displaying a layer of information that we normally don't express in all the detail that's available. Technically, Gloss knows not only when the annotations were created and of what type, it knows who created them, it knows what time they were created, it knows physically what position they are on the page, and any other parameters that might be essential to that particular style of annotation. Right now, that's not currently expressed. When we talk about the tech a little bit later, we'll talk about why. But the main thing for all of you to understand is that you don't have to hunt for these annotations. You can actually find them just by bringing up that sidebar. Similarly, if you bring up the thumbnails, all those annotations are going to be rendered right there in the thumbnails as well. So they're going to be visible if you prefer to kind of scroll to and find things that you're looking for. And then, of course, you can select and remove something if you need to. Once I'm all done making annotations, if I hit the cancel button, all the annotations I've made in that session will go away. Any pre-existing annotations will be unaffected. But when I hit save, it's now going to take all those instructions I've given the web viewer about how I want the annotations to be positioned. It's going to actually put them into the PDF file on the Gloss server, and then it's going to send those annotations, the annotated document, back to my container field. And then this demo file just overwrites the original. But that's business logic that you can control inside the scripts. And so you can see now I can navigate. I can similarly bring up those annotations in the sidebar and use it to jump to different areas that I want to. It's really just a difference is I just don't have the tools to do additional edits. I just click on this little icon, the pencil, to annotate the document additionally. So when you get the demo file, you'll see that even in some of the demo files that we've uploaded, there are existing annotations. All of them will have the little watermark we put up here for the demo. And then there's a couple of different images and text highlights throughout the document that are left over from just testing and experimenting that we've done. So you'll have those annotations when you get it. All these annotations are truly stored as annotations in the PDF in a native way. So for example, go back to the one I modified with you. If I click this little export button up here, this will just export the container field data. I can save it to my desktop. I can say automatically open it on my Mac. It's going to open it with preview. And you can see, I can see those annotations. And they are objects in here, just like they should be, right? Because they are effectively just a layer of annotations that were created by this tool. This is no different than the experience you might get if you were to do something in Acrobat or iAnnotate or one of those other PDF editing tools where you can make annotations and then open it up with a different PDF reader. Those annotations will all be preserved. But there's going to be a few that act a little different. You know, for example, on this page, I think we've got a link in here somewhere. I don't know exactly where the links are. Sometimes I lose track of those pages. Let me see if I can find that here. Help me find it. Where did I put the links? I put the link. Did I get rid of those? There we go. That's one of my sticky notes. That's on page 40. So let me go down here to page 40. And even though I used a key icon here for my note, here it's just a classic, correctly colored, but just a generic sticky note icon like you get in preview. If you bring this into Acrobat, you might have a generic sticky note icon you get from Acrobat. So there's going to be those kinds of differences in how it handles things. And the way I like to think about it is like all the annotation tools out there for PDFs, they have a common library of annotations they support and a way that they style those and display them. And then some of them have unique annotation styles like callouts or other things that might be just unique to that particular annotation tool. And those are not necessarily going to be displayed because it just won't be known how to be displayed. But as long as you're staying within Gloss, all of those are obviously going to be supported, and you're not going to have any kinds of troubles there. The last piece I want to show you before I switch back briefly to the presentation, and then we'll kind of fall into what else do we want to talk about, what else do we want to explore, is to show you this bookmarking feature I talked about. So if we are in the demo file and looking at this low-code ebook that was preloaded, and we click on this little bookmark icon up in our toolbar, we're going to display a little bookmark pop-up that's going to come out. We have a couple bookmarks that we've actually preloaded. So right now, if I click on this bookmark right here, it's going to navigate me to page 7 of this particular PDF. And the way that's happening is that every time we change pages in the web viewer and scroll through and move around or use the navigation tools to go to a particular page, we are establishing a variable associated to that page we're on. And so when we want to add a bookmark, for example, if I was to go here and say, take me to page 15, and then I hit add a bookmark, it's going to grab that value for page 15 for this particular document and create a bookmark record in a child table. And I'm going to say this is a sample bookmark record. So this could have several fields. You could have an ability here to assign it to a user, make it a to-do that has to be reviewed. You really could, maybe categorize them in some way that lets you kind of quickly find citations or resources. The sky's the limit. Once you've got this sort of beachhead of for this document, for this page, here's a FileMaker record that's basically a pointer back to that. You can decide what you want to do with that downstream in your solution. If I navigate to another document, it may or may not have any bookmarks. It depends on whether or not any have been created. I don't know that I actually created. There we go. I think I created some on this Jefferson Memorial. So this has its own set of bookmarks. It takes me to page, does it not? I thought I saw them there. Maybe it was this one. Here we go. So I have bookmarks in here for page 24 and page 13 of this document. That's different than the few that I have loaded in here for this, or the one I just created over here for this document. So I created it here. So a simple technique, we're not really doing anything to the PDF there. What we're doing there is just knowing what page you're looking at the moment you create the bookmark, so we can store that value. And then we've got a script that when I click here, says, hey, take me to that document and load that page. So there's some built-in scripts that we give you as well to help with that technique. All right. Is there anything about the demo of the basic features, Greg, that I'm forgetting?
Yeah, that was great, Mark.
All right, thank you. So let's switch back briefly here to the rest of these slides. All right. So if you want to see all this and also look under the hood, go to our website. There's a button at the very top that says gloss. In the very, right above the header of every page. You can just go to skeletonkey.com and search for gloss or /gloss. Fill out this form, and it's going to send you an email with instructions for downloading gloss. And then once you launch gloss, it's going to ask you for your email address so it can give you your own custom token. So I can get into the details of how we got here, but I don't necessarily want to go too far down that rabbit hole. I'm going to give you kind of the tip of the iceberg here, the basics of how we got here, a little bit about the architecture, but I'm going to spare you the deep dive into marketing and pricing and managing this through a development life cycle. That's definitely pulling back the hood really far, but maybe it's something someone's interested in, and so I can always come back and share those slides. So let's give you the basics of how we got here. We had a problem with a customer. They had done some of their own investigation into technologies that might be able to solve it, and wondered whether we could incorporate those into the FileMaker solution we were building for them. We did, and as we did so, we realized that there was a lot of power in this tool, and there was an opportunity to potentially create a better, simpler version of this, a simpler version of this, without all the complexity that this client had needed, because it does solve some basic problems. And then, of course, they went much further with it, since it was just a way to get to what they wanted in terms of functionality. But we realized that others could use it as also as a stepping stone, the basic functionality that they needed to get somewhere else. So we had a client. They had a lot of large PDFs. They were putting them into Dropbox or some other kind of online repository. They were trying to share them as a team and annotate them. But they also had all this project-related data that had was referencing these documents, and they needed to kind of be able to bookmark and tag and collaborate around mentions of various topics that would appear across multiple documents, potentially within the same document. They also had a lot of rules. They wanted to be able to say who could do what, who was allowed to use annotations, who was allowed to edit the master copy, who was allowed to edit a copy of their own. And so they wanted some permission control and role-based functionality there. They also had a bunch of different users using Macs and PCs, and they wanted some mobility so they could use this in the field. And they also wanted to be able to invite collaborators in who were going to use WebDirect because they couldn't install any kind of FileMaker on any of their devices. And so they just had all these different requirements, and the main thing here was finding the right technology and seeing if we could actually make it work. So that technology was identified. We'll share what that is here in a minute, so you can go explore it directly yourself if you want to. But it wasn't trivial. It was pretty complicated. It required a multi-server configuration, a lot of security work, a little bit of JavaScript magic that we had to do inside FileMaker to manage things like the page controls and other kinds of interactions. And that we're currently fighting with the iOS 17. Tons of hours of our work, some of it with that client on their project, some of it obviously not trivial amount on our own, learning the technology for them, and then subsequently trying to figure out how to convert that technology into a more commercial and easy to use product for all of you. And the end result of this equation is, viewing, searching, and annotating the PDFs in FileMaker. Technology-wise, this is the core technology that's involved. It's something called PSPDF Kit. It's one of several different PDF viewing and annotating libraries that are available for license. The licensing wasn't trivial. There were certain costs and minimums required and reporting and so on. But there's a lot of power. If you go follow that link, which I'm more than happy to paste into the messages, or Greg can while we're chatting here, you can see an online web demo of this. You can see they have a range of technologies and different ways that you can use this technology in different environments, whether it's server side or possibly bundled into an app on a device. You can see some of the customers out there who are using it, like Box and others who use this as their PDF viewing and annotating technology. In our case, it was hosting and setting up the PSPDF Kit environment, using S3 to temporarily store those documents while they're being viewed and to cache them so that they can be viewed quicker within a certain window of time. So you don't have to upload the PDF every time you want to start to view it or do more annotations on it. And the ability on your FileMaker Pro local client or a FileMaker server hosted solution where you might have WebDirector Pro or Go clients connected to be able to access that and go directly. So for that first client, they had a single tenant setup, and this is how things worked. What we then did was came up with a mechanism to allow it to be multi-tenant. And to do that, we added another layer in the mix. We put another server. It allowed us to do things like manage different accounts, so we could have different customers with different solutions coming in. It allowed us to introduce layers of security so that you wouldn't be able to see your neighbor's documents and vice versa. Logging, so we could actually allow for more flexible pricing plans. And then a really simplified API. The comprehensive API that's available in PSPDF Kit is pretty deep. It does tons of things. Like I mentioned previously, an example of one, like knowing where all the annotations are positioned. It includes extraction functionalities. You can do add-ons that give you redaction capabilities. It could potentially support multiple types of files as opposed to just PDFs. So it's a really deep well of power and capability, some of which we had licensed for them. But we understood that making all that available would really not work as well in a multi-tenant environment. It would really raise the bar on complexity. So we simplified it, and we focused on viewing, annotating, and the ability to do a couple of bells and whistles inside the actual interface, which I'll show you here in a moment, which is customizing the toolbar and flattening the annotations. So flattening means like to take that layer of annotations and make them part of effectively the background images that are part of the document itself. So they become more permanent, if not background, they become more permanent artifacts that are part of the file, and they can no longer be edited or removed. And so we figured that was a good starting point. We've got some other capabilities in the comprehensive API that we will over time be adding to the simplified API to make additional calls, different variables or flags that you can set to continue to be able to interact with the comprehensive API through this layer. But right now, this is what the layer does. It mostly allows us to make it multi-tenant, and the trade-off was that we had to minimize some of the overall functionality that truly is available in the technology. But it also gives us, I guess, a lot of runway, right? If we find that Gloss is useful, people want to subscribe and benefit from it, we have the ability then to start to say, well, here are the top features that we think we'd like to add to the Gloss API next. Which ones are the most interesting to the audience? It allows a particular customer to say, hey, this is great, but I really wish we could do this other thing. And we say, well, the API can do that, so let's build that for you. And then once that's done, that API is up to date. We can now make that product that we offer to the future richer for everyone else. So it really does give us what I think of as sort of a deep backlog of opportunities to continue to evolve and improve Gloss. So if you do download the demo, you'll get an open solution with full access, so you can see everything under the hood in terms of how it works. You're going to have your own unique API token that's good for 30 days. You can request another token if you want, but there's a limit. We'll let you upload up to 100 PDF files as long as not any one of them is larger than 200. And megs, they're really stored in the file. So the only thing that we're going to do is as you put them in the file and view them and annotate them, like I said, we're uploading them to the Gloss server and we're keeping them there for a handful of days so that performance is improved the second or third time you view them. And you can even undo that if you want. You can say, hey, I want to view it, I want to annotate it, I want to save it, and I want you to delete it off the server. Don't cache it. So we give the developer control of that. But we put in hopefully long enough time, large enough ceiling, and big enough files that you can really take this thing for a test drive. And then, of course, because it's an unlicensed demo, and this is part of how we managed this with the company we licensed the technology from before we built the infrastructure to feed it to a FileMaker environment or develop the functionality in the scripts to allow you to interact with it. We add a watermark to every document, right? So you can take the watermark off. We're going to put it right back on the next time you view the document. And so that's just one way for us to kind of continue to keep it in demo mode. We also have a page that's highly visible and linkable from any Gloss page you find on our website. A Word document with step-by-step instructions. It gives you basics on how to move Gloss from the demo file that you just got to any existing solution that you have. And we do it by using a content management solution just to kind of take one of the star solutions and use it as a guinea pig. We also explain how to customize the annotation toolbar. We talk to you about how to use the flattening feature. And then we give you some common multi-user and storage scenarios that you could run into. In many ways, we leave those options up to the developer. So, you can use privilege sets, you can use scripts, you can use multiple tables and fields to come up with any version of this that you want. Whether it's every document, can be viewed independently through its own web viewer, or whether you have a global setup where as you need the viewing functionality, you load it into a global field that gets sent up so that it's all kind of handled in one place. You've really got a lot of choices. And we wanted you to all understand some of the common scenarios that could happen when two people try to annotate the same document, or someone views a document that you're actively annotating, or how you might handle purging the file on the server if you don't want us to keep a copy for performance sake next time you need it. And then an FAQ with questions that keep changing as we identify limits or capabilities that come up in these meetups. So I've got 3 or 5 FAQs I'm going to be putting up there this week of things that we've realized are common questions that we should put frequently asked questions up there for. If you like what you see in the demo, you have the ability to go to the pricing page and get pricing. And so we have a pay-as-you-go or a prepay model. We have a viewing only and a viewing and annotation model. And in many ways, these are honor system models, because while we have logging, the functionality is the same, right? Like, we give you what you ask for, and then you decide how you're going to use it. And then we can review the logs to see how you used it. We won't see what annotations you made. We won't look at what documents and edits you made. We're not looking at the actual content, but we can see that you have a user that went into annotation mode versus a user who just stayed in view mode, and how many people did within a given time period. And because we have to report on activity and usage, we need to have at least some kind of log. We figured this would give people the ability to say, look, I've got 30 people who need to view PDFs all day long and search them and navigate through thumbnails and such, but I've only got 5 people who will ever do edits. There's no reason for you to have 35 users who can do edits. Then maybe you just do 5 editors, annotators, and 30 viewers, and kind of optimize your spend. All right, so we're going to go into feedback time and possibly additional demo time. I'm going to take the slideshow down here in a second. I did want to share some of the common questions that have come up along the way, but I can do that after you guys fire away with some of your questions first. And if there's anything else I can show you in either the web viewer or in the client, or if you want me to dive under the hood and look at the code, I'm more than happy to do that. So let me stop here and minimize the PowerPoint and ask folks to come up and start firing away. We may have had some questions along the way.
There were a couple of questions in the chat.
Sure.
One about annotations, whether they can be set for only specific people to view. So it sounds like, is there any kind of security settings available to say that, like, if you notate a document, that standard user, lower level user wouldn't be able to see that notation, but a higher level user would?
You would have control over that yourself. It would be an all or nothing thing. So for example, I can imagine a scenario where you say, look, I've got the original document in a container field. And when a user with the this privilege set wants to annotate the document, I let them. And so I let them fire off the script that takes them to the web viewer that shows them the annotation tools. And then when they're done editing and annotating, I let them save them back to a different container field that same group of users has privileges to. And so then just using standard FileMaker tools, you could say, look, if I'm a user who doesn't have that privilege set, then load the original vanilla PDF and let me view that one. And don't let me ever go into annotation mode. But if I'm an annotation user and there is a file in the annotation container field, then load that one so I can continue viewing and annotating it. So again, this would all be nothing we'd have to change on Gloss. It would just be a use case where we might have to guide you through that mental process I just did on the fly as to how you might do that. Greg, is there a different answer that you would give to that question?
No, that's exactly what I would have said.
Yeah, that's awesome. That was my question. Yeah, and thanks for the demo. I was very intrigued when I haven't looked at the file, but at the documentation. Yeah, the use case that I'm thinking is that, you've got different teams within an organization or even outside the organization that you want to be able to see certain things or not see certain things. And the standard PDF doesn't support that. So I'm thinking FileMaker and flexibility, and almost what I was thinking, which of course would require code, is that you would keep some of those annotations in FileMaker in that parallel database, like where you're keeping your bookmarks, and they would only show based on privileges or groups or settings or so on. But obviously that'd be more coding, but it keeps you down to one PDF. But I like the idea of saving duplicate PDFs. Yeah, that's manageable.
That's how that original client actually does something like that, is that they have the master kind of vanilla untouched version. Then they have as many, I think, individual or shared versions. And so, obviously any version control system can get pretty complicated, Dean, right? The more you fork your versions, the more complicated it is to find the right one if there's not good titling or comments to explain it. Functionality wise, the comprehensive API could allow something like you described, where annotations are made, information about those annotations is captured, is stored as records, and then selectively annotations could be reapplied programmatically. But that would require non-trivial amount of scripting using the main API, the comprehensive API. So that's certainly not expressed in Gloss. It would probably be more of this sort of brute force, have a wholly separate version for those people who need privileges. And if there's multiple groups who need to have their own private versions, come up with some approach to privilege sets or extended privileges that allows you to know who's in which group and therefore where their version of the file is with their set of annotations.
I mean, sometimes we all have private annotations, right? So that there's kind of the first step, which is I want just my notes, and then I'll take everybody else's shared notes. But it's a heading that this is important, this is not important, or don't forget to, that kind of stuff. So, but right. No, I get it.
You could certainly do that with the bookmark feature, I think, perhaps, if it was just a matter of, hey, I want to take some notes about page 7. I want to take some notes about page 10. And I want those notes to be mine. Well, then that could just be a simple, if I create the bookmark, it's mine, right? Yeah. If it's got this flag, only Dean can see it. And if I want to, I can choose to share that bookmark, and now it's public. That wouldn't be the same as sharing annotations or selectively sharing annotations, but it might get a bit closer to what you're looking for with Gloss, I should say.
And let me just ask a licensing question. I'm a nonprofit guy, so I'm thinking of actually using this for medical PDFs that I'm sharing within my community, within a small community, not generally publicly, because some of these are paid for and cross researchers. So cost is always important to us. You talked about using AWS primarily for caching purposes. I get that. So there's costs with that, but it seems like your view versus annotate licensing costs are actually pretty close. And those are built off of, I presume, obviously you guys make some money and you've done some programming. I get that, but you've got are you paying per user back to your PDF kit or whatever the API is?
Yeah, we paid for a certain minimum number of licenses on an annual basis. So when first I licensed this technology, we couldn't license it for the 30 users that the client had. We had to license it for more like 100 users. And so that was like the first tier. So we did that knowing that this technology had a lot of potential. It was going to lead to a lot of development work with that client. So that was good for them and for us. But we have this gap, right, between what they needed and what we had actually licensed. So quarterly, I think right now, our arrangement with them is that we report on unique users per quarter, how many unique people. So we do have some requirements that you can't have shared accounts, that you have to have people with named accounts. We have to have some way to know how many humans actually use this per quarter, and we report that to them. And if we're under 100 licenses, we're fine. If we go over, then we have to pay them more for that licensing. The more Gloss grows in terms of total population of access to it, the more we can license and the less expensive it gets to us per seat. But it does it in these jumps. Kind of, there's no like buy 7 or buy 12 for us. We have to buy chunks at a time, almost like an SBA, right? We have to buy 50 at a time. But we wanted you guys to be able to access it in twosies and threesies, whatever works for you.
Sure. So the people that are using the web viewer, this is they got to be logged in. We can't just,
they would have to be logged in. And I think, well, and we could meet offline. I mean, I think for us,
I'd like to talk
having a reliable mechanism for us to report how many people used it. So even if you decided that you had to have some kind of other access approach, right? Some kind of guest access or a different accounting mechanism. If we could determine collectively using persistent IDs or device IDs or some other kind of proxy, how many unique users were involved in you viewing it for a given period, so we could report in a qualified way to the company we licensed the technology for, there may be a solution there. And I would want you to work through that thinking with Greg, as I think he's much closer to understanding how that reporting takes place.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and Mark, may I ask, how long has this journey been going on? You don't have to answer. Because I know as a developer, it's a big deal.
When did we start commercializing Gloss, Greg? Do you remember?
We've discussed it over the last 4 years, right? Since we first built the solution for this client. But only in the last year, I think we really put a lot of effort into trying to commercialize it and turn it into a product.
That's what I wanted to know. That sounds about
when we bought that initial 100 licenses, that was a choice right then. Are we prepared to license this at a higher tier if the client can only really reasonably be, I guess we could have negotiated anything with them, but we negotiated it as, this minimum number of users for you and the rest will be ours to do something with. And then we focused on them and their needs, knowing we were carrying this extra cost. In many ways, I think this is and that's not it's not trivial, but it's not massive in terms of the cost. The massive investment, I think, was the time Greg and Jay and I and others have spent over the last year, probably in that order, developing the 200 or so issues, managing this through various sprints and testing, creating the demo file to illustrate it, writing up the instructions and testing them and so on. And it would take a long time, I think, until we ever get a return on that investment. I think on some level, this is a labor of love in that we just don't like how PDFs are viewed in FileMaker, and there's a better way. And there's a whole landscape of PDF FileMaker integration tools, but none of them did something this basic. They all seem to kind of bring some feature or send it out to a service, and we wanted to stay in FileMaker. Let me view the thing consistently. Let me annotate it consistently. And solving that was a real goal. If we can break even on the investment on the technology and the infrastructure, that would be the next goal. And if we could generate some revenue for Skeleton Key, that would be the third goal. But I think in the beginning of launching this product, it's mostly about, is this useful? Was our bet the right bet? Can we at least make this thing cover its cost? And eventually it would be nice if it was a recurring revenue. We're also hopeful that it leads to opportunities for development, both for us and for all the other developers out there. If you have something you can now offer your clients as a powerful new way to interact with PDFs inside your solutions, that's going to require more than just simple licensing. It's going to require the evolution of your interfaces and your workflows to accommodate this new capability you didn't have before, especially that bookmarking feature. And that, I think, is where there's a great opportunity for all of us with the tool. Is this could just be the seed to something else that really is where we want to spend most of our time, which is building things.
Hey, Mark, I have a question, if I may.
Yeah.
So is this basically done with API calls? what's the integration process look like?
Yeah, let me take you on a peek under the hood. I think, yeah.
If other people are interested, otherwise we can talk about it in our meeting.
Yeah, so there is a bunch of API calls. You're right. Basically okay. It. We've got, this folder of API scripts, with the exception of these two that are in development. This is one of the things you copy and paste over, and it contains the logic. There's some custom functions that contain, some informational custom functions, but there's also where your token gets stored and what the URL is for viewing or annotating. So you're copying and pasting some custom functions. You're copying and pasting the API script. You're either modifying the scripts or creating a table that matches them in terms of names so that the fields and names show up correctly, because it's looking for a container field which stores the document, and it's looking for a place to put the ID of the document up on AWS, so it knows whether or not it's already been uploaded once before, and it might already be there to display it again. And then we have some feature-specific scripts, some annotation scripts that drive the annotation interface, or the bookmarking scripts that drive the bookmarking interface. And then some that really have nothing to do with anything but the demo file itself. Just, this button here, and this button here, and the navigation buttons here, and even this whole series of screens that kind of introduce you to it in the first place. That stuff is just part of the demo file. We've all seen that before, demo files that have their own wrapper that then you go and you tear out the pieces of the guts that you want. Your steps are going to be copy, paste custom functions, copy and paste scripts, maybe a little bit of adjustment to your schema before and after to make sure that when you copy and paste, things don't break, and then you're off and running.
Okay. Is there like a I suppose in the demo file there's a sample table that you could probably use as a starter for your.
You don't even need that. You really only need. I'm going to go switch now to the gloss documentation, because I think it does a good job of spelling out. So this link takes you to this document, and it talks to you about adding gloss to an existing solution, which is 6 or 7 pages, but it's mostly pictures. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. So we do a content management solution. We copy and paste the custom functions. We go into layout mode, and we do a little bit of resizing just to make things work. We put a web viewer in there that didn't exist before, and we give it a particular name so that when we copy and paste some scripts, it'll find the right named object. We copy a couple of fields, and we talk a little bit here about the need for certain fields and tables to line up. So it could be, Jonathan, that you already have a container field that's called something, and we want to make sure you call it document, because that's what we call it in our scripts. And then you can change it back to container or whatever it is you want after you're done copying and pasting. We are assuming you've got some kind of table where that container field is stored. And so again, we can copy and paste the scripts and not break things, and you could temporarily rename your table, or you could copy and paste and just know that there's going to be some things that get broken in the script, and you're going to have to go and just repick the right table and repick the right field. And the same thing with the IDs. So there's really only 3 dependencies when we come over here. We put the custom functions in, which is one set of dependencies. Then there's this table field and field dependency. Everything else we're bringing in is really just layout elements to help you do things quickly. So we actually have a part here where we say, okay, you've got the basic functionality working for viewing. Now let's make that edit button work. And so we take you through the process of how to get things to refresh properly. And then we take you through the process of creating a new layout, making it a certain size, and copying and pasting our annotation layout over there. So it's a card window. And you basically recreate the same kind of experience in your file that you have in the demo file as a first step, knowing that that's just one way to bring it in, that you could, once you understand how simple it is, you could then decide to annotate in a different interface or to pop out a separate window instead of a card window. You really have a lot of choices. So we're really just trying to help you bring it over. I think about a handful of pages later, you make a couple of edits to the buttons to make sure that they're calling the right scripts and have the right parameters. Maybe get rid of a couple of unnecessary buttons that probably aren't useful, but are useful for the demo file, and you're done. So it doesn't take a lot of work to do it. I've done it in about 5 minutes once I did it a few times. So it's not a very laborious process. And we've had several people test the instructions. So I think they're pretty reliable if you just follow them. We do it with the content management solution. I've done it with a blank file, where I just created a new file. I added a couple of fields. I renamed the table and then just started copying and pasting stuff in, and boom, it was done. And all that file had in it was a container field and the standard set of fields that come in with every new table.
Great.
Are there other questions? Yeah, sure. Let me give you a peek now at a couple other features then, since we got a little time. So in our scripts, we have, where are they? I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is an example of one. Is that zooming in for all of you guys or just me? Yeah, great. All right, great. So you can see here, we have one of the variables we have is remove toolbar items. So it's a little tricky, right? The idea here is how do you customize what icons show up in the toolbar, all the way from the left side where you can actually bring up the sidebar items, through the navigation and searching tools, all the way across to the very rightmost annotation with the drawn objects. Because of the way that web viewers behave in Pro and Go and WebDirect, there's slightly different ways that they deal with things like exporting content or printing. And so we kind of had to do this a little bit of the reverse of what you'd think. Instead of saying, hey, here are all the tools that I want you to show, we basically ask it, which tools don't you want to see? And so we've kind of pre-configured it to not show the bookmarks that are built into the PDF. We've pre-configured it to not show the print and export PDF tools when you're in Go or Pro, so that those things aren't there and they malfunction. But you have the ability to go into this, let's say, in annotation mode. And let's say I decided that I also didn't want to see one of the annotation tools. I don't have these all memorized by name, so I'm going to go to Manage Custom Functions. I don't think we have them in a value list. No, we have them in a custom function. And it's really just a list of all the toolbars. These are all the toolbar items. I'll zoom in so you can see them. The sidebar thumbnails, the sidebar document outline, the sidebar annotations, the paging tools, the ability to select annotations, panning, zooming, searching, and then annotations with ink and highlighters and text highlighters. So you're seeing all the terminology that the API is using for expressing those different tools and rendering them. We can't control the order, but we can say just don't show it. So let's say, for example, I decided I didn't want to see the signature one. I just want it to be gone. I don't want to confuse anybody about creating signatures in my PDFs. So I'm going to go ahead and come in here. Whoops, getting a little used to this. And I'm going to say, when I'm in Pro or Go, don't include the signature tool. Was it option 7? There we go. Now, we can't control the order, so it really doesn't matter where I put it in the list. I just said don't include it. And so this should now exclude, once I save that. Did I do something wrong there? I don't think so. Yeah, that's okay. Oops, I have a space in there. There we go. So all I've done is that's the only edit I made. Sorry for the misclicks there. I just added one more tool to exclude. So now that I've done that, save that script. Now, if I go back to annotation mode, it's gone. So given that that's just a script variable, you can imagine anything that you want in FileMaker, from phase of the moon, time of the day, privilege set that the user has, settings on this particular document, who owns it, blah, 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 could all decide which branch you do to load which set of toolbar items. And you could say, this user can use these toolbar items on these days, or when this document has reached this stage of development. Maybe it's a manuscript management system, or maybe it's a contract management system, and maybe the PDF represents different versions of it. And if it reaches a stage of final approval, maybe they're no longer allowed to use certain annotation tools at that point because those are off the table, but in previous stages. So any field, any logic you want could be used to kind of govern that behavior. You might have noticed there as well in the scripts. Let me go into that same annotate document. Actually, no, it's not there. I believe it's the download document. And this is where we have the flattened value. So right now it's set to false by default. And that just means, hey, bring down the document with the annotations intact and put it back in the container field. But if you set this flattened to true, then in the process of Gloss reassembling those annotations in the document and sending them down to you, it will take all those annotations and it'll flatten them into the document, and they will no longer be editable by Gloss or any other PDF tool. You'd have to go into something like Illustrator to actually start editing objects and lines as if it was artwork. So
Mark,
again, you have a lot of control over that stuff right there inside the scripts.
Mark, can you speak to forms? Is there anything unique or advantageous to what you're doing through this API that would help us or hinder us in forms?
I don't think so. I don't remember, Greg, whether or not PSPDF Kit natively in the primary API can interact with form fields in a PDF or not, but not within Gloss.
Right. I don't think we've exposed any of that right now.
And I don't think if we're in the viewer, and this is something I can't say for sure, but maybe you know the answer, Greg, but I would presume that because the PDF file is being rendered into the web viewer, that if it was a PDF with form fields, those form fields would not allow interaction while it's in the viewer or the annotated, that they would be drawn objects on the screen. They would not have that kind of attributes that a PDF form field normally has.
I can't say that for certain. Yeah.
Yeah, that's worth testing. We could do
that sounds like a common use case where somebody pulls up a form, wants to fill it out and send it on or something.
Yeah, let me see if I can really quickly find a form. I think I've got one here. I just need to find some PDFs on my computer and see if I can find one which has.
Yeah, even helping people with annotations before they sign or check or click, and then you remove those. We program automatically remove those annotations when it's finalized. That would be cool too.
Yeah, so I've got a form. Okay, let's try this. I put this on my desktop. This is just let me share my screen again. This is a live demo. Love that kind, right? Nothing could go wrong. What could go wrong? Where's my desktop? I just put it up there. It was just on my screen here a second ago. Hold on here, folks. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. This is an activity consent form for the Boy Scouts. I have 4 sons, and they've all been in Scouts. 2 of them are still in Scouts. So I'm going to upload this document. It has, like all PDFs, they all have their different ways that they express form fields, with some with greater or lesser fidelity. Let's find out together how those behave in view mode. So these are normally fields for editing. Looks like it lets me select them like it normally does, but I wouldn't expect it to allow me to edit them. Let me go into edit mode. It's not letting me type into those fields. Normally, if I open up that form, let's say in preview, I can check those boxes. You can see this is like a really badly built form. Actually, no, it's not. It's just, it lets me type into that field. So it's recognizing that there's something there. It's wanting to do something with that field, but it's not letting me actually type into it. So even though this is text that I could highlight, it's seeing that this is a unique object. but it doesn't appear to be allowing me to type into it in any way. So that's not a full test, obviously. There could be some PDF form that's got the form fields defined in a more sophisticated or different way. But my gut tells me, because this is rendered, it knows that that's an object there. It's able to see it as potentially an object I might want to discretely select, but it isn't allowed me to do the normal PDF stuff. And we've seen similar behavior with, say it's in the same kind of ballpark with encrypted PDFs, is that if we have an encrypted PDF stored in the field, it will come up with the password dialog box right here in the viewer and let me type it in and show it to me. And it'll even do that in the annotation mode and let me annotate. But then when we try to save those annotations back, the server on the back end's like, wait a second, I don't know the password for this. And so then it fails to save the annotations back. So we've got that in our list of things to try to figure out if there's a way around that or not, or if that's just going to be a limitation of the current version of Gloss. Let me switch back to that last slide that I didn't show you guys before. So these are the kinds of things that have come up and are either destined to become new features or services, or maybe they'll end up on the not doing list. We've already shown you, you saw that we're working on some text extraction capabilities. So there are some native calls built into PSPDF Kit that allow us to retrieve text and bring it back as JSON objects, like what is the text and where is it positioned. I believe there's also API calls that allow us to just get the text independent of positions and treat it as more raw text you might throw into a field and for indexing and searching, similar to some of the tools out there like Scribe or Monkey Bread, which do some of that extraction capabilities. Probably the unique capabilities in PSPDF Kit is that positional information, not just what the text is, but where it is on the layout. So we had a client who's using Gloss who asked for that capability. They wanted to be able to identify invoice numbers or PO numbers or something like that on PDFs and bring them into the right fields. And they didn't just want to like take all the text and then hunt for patterns. They wanted to say, look, in the top right corner, usually within this zone, there's some text there. So can we look up there and grab it, or grab all the text and find the text that's in that zone and then parse just that? And so that'll likely be a feature that some future version will roll out in whole or in part. The annotations are another piece. Turning those into JSON that you can pull back and actually put into records. It's great if you can bookmark a page, but how much cooler would it be if you could say, take all the annotations I've made and turn all the ones of this type into records and assign all of them to Joe for review. We have had scenarios where, for example, someone is using Gloss with floor plans, and they're putting issue stamps, rejected this or please look at that at various places with call outs, let's say. Turning all of those various stamps or call outs into records for follow-up as like a punch list, which could then be assigned in a workflow in FileMaker as records that someone has to review and check and indicate what they did to address them before going in, and allowing those annotations to be removed or an updated version of the plans to be submitted. So that is something that is high up on our list, is something we might want to add in the future, because those annotations are available, but again, it would just require another API call that we'd have to build into our code. We already are doing something like this for clients. One client in particular had a lot of documents that didn't have a text layer. And so they had two options. They could either run them through an OCR process before they put them into Gloss or PSPDF Kit, or they could put them into the FileMaker file, and then we could run a backend process that would take those files and run them through an OCR process and then add that missing text layer in there. And so whether this will be something that we add as a feature flag, whether this will be an add-on that we charge separately for, or whether this is just a technique that will explain how we did it so you can do it yourself if you wanted to go to the trouble. There's all different ways to solve that problem, but we've already solved it for one client. It doesn't mean that they get those OCR results immediately. Some of these are 2,000-page documents, so there's a queue of things that are being OCR'd and overnight and such in the background. But once they are OCR'd, then they're searchable and can be manipulated. Redaction comes up periodically, wanting to be able to literally redact things, not just highlight it in black, but literally make that unsearchable, unfindable, and gone in the document. You're actually manipulating now the content of the PDF, not just putting something on top of it as an annotation. That's an add-on that would require additional licensing, but it would allow, like page manipulation, being able to reorder the pages without ever leaving the web viewer. Those would be extra features that we'd have to add on. So these are examples, I think, of things where if somebody was using Gloss and needed those capabilities, they could be the instigator of that evolution of the licensing and the functionality, which would then potentially allow people downstream to benefit from some of those new capabilities. We do have a technique that I need to publish about images. You could technically take an image from a container field, bring it onto a layout, save it out as a PDF, bring the PDF back in, and then now you have an image that can be annotated. But if someone wanted to natively take an image and have the same annotation capabilities, if you go up to the PSPDF Kit website and look at their web demo, you'll see that they have those capabilities right there. So it is another add-on to the licensing model, one for which I said I think we can offer an alternative workaround. But that might be another example where someone has Word documents, Excel documents, images of various formats that they want to also be able to do this with. That's potentially possible as well. And those are just selected items. If you look at the web demo, you'll see a lot of other features, measurement capabilities, being able to take a plan and use measuring tools to set scale and then measure things and create dimensional callouts and things are another capability of the platform. So we have a couple of prospects we're talking to in the construction space who really want to be able, they've seen it. They've seen this technology work in other tools. And now they're thinking, wow, I can actually bring that right into my FileMaker solution. And so they've got a construction industry solution. They've got all these PDFs and plans, but people can't do measuring of the drawings or put call outs with measurements right on the drawings because they have to dump them out and use a different tool and then bring them back in. Now they can keep those people captive inside their FileMaker environment and do that right there. But again, that would require additional add-ons, but they're very simple features to use once they're added on. They just become new tools in the toolbar. Otherwise, we're going to announce anything that's coming new on our Twitter feed or in our blog or in partner product announcements. So if we release another version of Gloss with additional features, bug fixes, or addressing this iOS constraint we have right now, those things should be made public as much as we are able. We'll probably put them on our LinkedIn page as well. So follow any of those places and you'll be able to see what's going on with Gloss.
But you'll also, since you've captured our contact information, you'll probably also include them.
Correct.
In an email? Okay.
Yes. An email to all demo downloaders. And LinkedIn. So I can update this. Well, I don't know what I did there. We'll leave it there. Live edits to my presentation. That's it. That's Gloss.
Terrific. That is beautiful.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Thanks, Mark.
It really is.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well presented for sure.
Well, it's like anybody could have done it if they wanted to take, a couple of years and figure out the API and how to integrate it. But the fact that you've done all the heavy lifting so that we can just in a few minutes make it work, that's awesome. Yeah, because there's all kinds of those PDF libraries out there. Monkey Bread has a PDF tool that does a lot of stuff that I've used. But this is so much easier to work with.
And I don't think it's an either or either, Jonathan. I want to say, I remember Greg recently sharing with someone that that same client we mentioned does use Monkey Bread for some of the PDF things that we need to do.
Right. I'm sure that a lot of the conversions and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. You could, manipulate pages with Monkey Bread potentially, and then, use this to do viewing and annotating.
True, yeah.
I'm overdue for, and will likely be, I have another presentation this week with another meetup group on Friday. And then my next one, I think right now is not till May. But I'm also talking to a member of our community about being on their broadcast that they have to share it. And one of the things we talked about there was, you know, there are all these other PDF tools, and they're many of them are very different. They all they all overlap. There's like that example I was saying before about the annotation features overlapping across different annotation PDF products. Similarly, in the FileMaker ecosystem, there's about 5 or 6 different well-known or maybe even obscure PDF-related tools in the marketplace. And one of my tasks, I think, for that May meetup is going to be to try to create a simple chart that compares and contrasts them a little bit so that people understand this isn't an all or nothing game. There are things we don't do that those other tools do, and vice versa. How might you identify what you're really looking for and which tool is the right one to start with, and how you might combine some of those tools as well. I think several years ago at a DevCon, I did a presentation on sync technologies at the time. And it wasn't a which is better, it was how are they similar and how are they different? Which ones are easy or hard to learn? How are they priced? Because, and I've seen all of them in the wild, right? Like they, you know, it's like buying anything. There's rarely the one superior product. There's often just different choices to be made by the buyer.
Yeah, and with that comment, Mark, I think that in my use case where there might be guest access view only, so not annotate because clearly you have power there, then I might use one of those other tools, right? Because there's no license fee or it's a different model or whatever. But as soon as you come in to annotate or you become an administrator or whatever, then they come under your umbrella. So there's a place to play all that together. I would put maybe between now and May or whenever, I would put forms, you know, understanding forms better, because that seems like a place where you may have inadvertently is probably the wrong word, but you know, you've done a lot of work so far, you've been busy, but where you're limiting what people might expect out of PDFs. You know, you're not setting this primarily up for forms, but hey, you said you could potentially capture data, you know, extract fields or those kinds of things, and that's obviously a great tower, or for that matter, pre-fill fields. Now you could manage signatures or whatever, but that kind of interaction with FileMaker, I think, is really powerful.
Right.
But I love what you've done. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's
by you, I think it's Greg and the team. I'm just the ringmaster. All right, Ron, that's all I got, unless there's other questions.
Well, thank you for this contribution to the community. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was a really great presentation. Appreciate it so much. Suppose we can go ahead and end the recording and officially close the presentation. And if anybody wants to hang around and just talk about anything else and just hang out for a minute, you're welcome to. But I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and officially close the presentation. And thank you again, Mark and Greg. Appreciate it. And it's very exciting. Wonderfully presented. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.